Good morning and welcome. Welcome indeed to a Thursday edition of the Mark Moses Show here in beautiful Brevard County. And we are always broadcasting here live in the Anidjar and Levine Accident Attorney Studios. This is very key. Take back control of your life. Call them today at 1-800-747-FREE. That's 1-800-747-3733. Anidjar and Levine Accident Attorneys. Great partner of the Mark Moses Show. And this guy, he doesn't mess around every Thursday. He is my great friend, Tim Walters, with the Florida Today newspaper. And I just do that as his highlighted job. I know he's got 50 jobs behind the scenes. He's got the Cubs jersey on today. My man, how you doing, buddy?
Doing awesome, Mark. Looking forward to the home opener at Wrigley Field after 9 away to start the season.
Okay, I just noticed something on the stream. It says Tim Walters, and then in smaller print, I didn't know you could do this. It says Mr. 321. You are the first guest of this show to add more titles to your name on the screen. I appreciate that.
No problem, Mark. The program we're using now, StreamYard, believe it or not, I believe I was one of the very first people in the company of Gannett to start testing StreamYard some 6 or 7 years ago. And then I trained a bunch of people how to use it. Went a long time without using it and couldn't remember how, but I remembered some things this morning because I felt as though that Mr. 321 was needed on there.
I have much to discuss with you here on a Thursday. I will start with this. So last night when I was making dinner, I was like, I better text Tim to make sure I can come up with a time for us to talk on Thursday. So I wrote to you, did not get a response. I get it. You're a very busy man. You got work. You got a family. I get it. Bowling leagues, Transformer conventions. You're a very busy man. I got a text message at 6 a.m. this morning, and it said, okay, meaning from mine, which was like about 14 hours before that, hey, are you okay coming on this time? I get 6 a.m. okay. You know what's happened? We have finally gotten to the point in our relationship, and I've known you for a decade, that time doesn't matter. You remember when we were in our 20s, there used to be this rule, you don't message or call anyone before 11 a.m. like we were in college. It's over. You're going to text me anytime you want. I appreciate that, Tim. We have gotten to the next level of our friendship.
Well, if you want me to be honest with you, you text me at about 10 p.m. I had been in bed for about 35, 40 minutes by that time. So I woke up at 5:45 like a zombie. I just kind of, waltz into the shower. And then I checked my phone next. I saw your message, and it just, there are some people that you respond to right away. Good thing I didn't check my phone first, or you would have gotten that at about 5:45.
This is true. I was also up. I have turned into the president like Trump, where I'm sleeping 4 hours at a time. Then I'm in bed. I know you do this as well. We're all guilty of this. I'll get up at 3 a.m. I go to the bathroom because I'm an old man in Florida. And then you have this one moment. You're like, don't look at your phone. Don't look at your phone. Just close your eyes. Don't do it. And then I look at my phone. I'm up for 2 hours. Does this happen to you sometimes?
No, I make sure that I need my sleep. Look, from 9:30 until about 5:30 in the morning, I can try and get nearly 8 hours of sleep on a good day, maybe sometimes 10 o'clock to 5:30. But that wake up time, that's pretty hard and fast. Most days I'm up at 5:15 because I work out Mondays and Fridays. I run on Wednesdays. Tuesdays, grocery shopping day. I get to Walmart right when they open at 6 a.m. So yes, I'm a person that has to get lots of things done early because then it's work, take my kid to soccer, make dinner, and then go to bed, rinse and repeat.
Rinse and repeat. You have the whole schedule. You just said it off the top of your head. You were not looking at anything, and you just did that. Oh, so when is it Tim time? Not tool time. When is Tim's time to shine? Is it now when we're talking? Is that what it is?
Yeah, pretty much so. Remember, I have a pretty fun job. So I have a friend who's a nurse. He texted me earlier and I said, no need to respond to this. Your job is much more difficult than mine. So, like, I operate knowing that during the day, and we're going to talk about this story in a little bit. Yesterday, I spent an hour and a half researching things that, when combined, they would weigh as much as Desmond Watson, the 464-pound Florida Gator. So while I'm doing that, I have a nurse who's saving people's lives. My wife is a school teacher, which I can't tell you what brand of Hades that is for a person to go through on certain days. So I'm here in the playground while they're doing actual life-altering, difficult things.
So can I ask you your thoughts on how the Nintendo Switch 2 is going to cost $450? Or should I ask those courageous people that you're talking to? What should I do?
My daughter started playing video games fairly recently, and her friend has a Switch, and she's wanted one. And now that she knows about the new Switch, and I told her for a system and one game, it would cost like $530. So I told her, hey, we're a little bit too busy. You can either play soccer, which costs thousands of dollars too, or you can get a Nintendo Switch and be a zombie in front of a screen. I'd rather her outside running around in the 8 million degree heat.
Okay. They said Mario Kart, your favorite game that you played on the Super Nintendo, the new one, retail price $80. $80. A game that's been on every system for the last 30 years. I can play it on my cell phone now. The new one, it's the same idea. $80 for Mario Kart. That's the world we live in, buddy. I hope you tell that to your daughter. $80. She's gonna have to sell a lot of lemonade on the corner there in Vieira for $80 for Mario Kart.
Well, when you buy it, Mark, I'll come over and play with you.
Oh man, that is insane. $450 for the system, $80 for a game. 80. All right. I have to move on. I can't keep complaining about it. All right, I won't. You bring up the Gators defensive lineman. How much does he weigh again? What did you say?
He is 6'6", 464 pounds. He is a giant, an absolute giant. And if you check out my article at floridatoday.com, Gainesville.com, it's all over the state right now. Or just go to my Facebook page. You can find me easily on Facebook. I keep it public so people can enjoy the fun that I do. But there's this picture where my cousin, now I'm not a very big person. My cousin Vincent's a decent sized guy. He's got biceps that are as big as my legs. And he took a picture next to Desmond Watson and looked like a toddler. I mean, it is just, this guy is so gigantic, you can't even imagine it. So at his pro day the other day, I can't remember exactly, I think he did 25 bench presses of 250 pounds. I've got the exact numbers here in front of me. He did 36 bench press reps at 225 pounds. He ran a 5.9340, which is 13.8 miles an hour. Imagine that chasing you, Mark. 464 pounds can run 14 miles an hour. It's just insane what human evolution is doing to the body.
What is he eating on a day-to-day basis?
Whatever he wants.
I mean, that just blows your mind. Okay, so I'll go to the store, get one of those rotisserie chickens for like $6, and I'll eat it in 2 or 3 sittings. I feel like I'm a normal human being. Do you think he could go there, like get 3 of them and just eat them in one meal? I say yes. Is what? And what happens once he retires from football? Is he going to be 600 pounds? What's going to happen? Is this part of your article? I have questions. Come on.
Now I do know at the University of Florida, they tailor the diets for for your position, for who you are. Nowadays, sports science has gotten so precise that they know what they're doing to keep him at a certain weight or bring him up or down from a certain weight. I would imagine, and he's projected to be a lower round pick in the NFL, or an undrafted free agent. I would imagine if somebody takes him, they're going to want to get him down from 464 to maybe, let's say, 425 or 430. Now, to give you an idea, Mark, the heaviest player in the NFL last year was Daniel Falele of the Baltimore Ravens. He weighed 379 pounds, tied for the heaviest player to ever play in the NFL. If Desmond Watson were to be drafted he would become the heaviest player ever in the NFL by 85 pounds. I mean, it's just that's 18% heavier than Fa Lele. So, and I mean, it's
That's
just,
insane. Dude,
yeah,
that's crazy. What are you know what I love? This goes back to your opening statement where you're like, school teachers, nurses, they're helping the community. You're like, what am I going to write about? I'm going to write about these gigantic fat guys and how they're great athletes. You did all this research. I love it.
well, it's incredible too, because when you think about it, the Gators not only have the heaviest football player in football history,
Oh.
they also have the tallest college basketball player currently in the country. And his name is Oliver Rue or Ryu, however you pronounce
I
his
mean,
last name. It's definitely French, but he stands 7'9". He weighs 305 pounds. So Watson might be 1 foot 3 inches shorter, but he weighs 150 pounds more. Couple
I
more.
I was going to tell you this. We're here at Tim Walters, Florida today. Always appreciate you coming on. Remember, I was at the O-Dome. I stood by him. My brain stopped for a minute. And I remember I saw Taco Fall at UCF, who's 7'4", whatever he is. This guy, he keeps going. Like, he just keeps going and going and going. And he'd be on the bench, right? So he's at the end of the bench. He didn't really play. And then it's like, like the role players on the bench, like the Gators make a great play. They all stand up. Yay! It was an eclipse. You couldn't see the court when he stood up. And he's a great kid, but it was shocking, man. What were you going to say?
You don't want to have the seats behind him. That's for sure.
No, you
You know,
don't.
I tried finding some other comparisons for Desmond Watson. Now, obviously, there was somebody bigger than Desmond, Andre the Giant, who they claimed was 7'4". Most people said he was about 7 feet tall, weighed 525 pounds at his peak. The closest comp I could find for Desmond Watson was the man they called the walking condominium, King Kong Bundy. He was 6'4", 458 pounds. So around the same weight and about an inch or two shorter. It's just when you think of the girth, I had some fun with this, Mark. A gallon of milk weighs 8 pounds, 9 ounces. He would be 54 and a half gallons of milk.
Okay. You know what you do with him in the NFL? We're discussing this week, should they get rid of the tush push with the Philadelphia Eagles? So if I'm the Cowboys, Commanders, Giants in that division, I'd take him in a late round. And when the Eagles line up for the tush push, guess what? I got a 500-pound defensive lineman. Yeah, try to do the tush push on us now. He's going to get drafted because of that. He will.
Yeah, I think so. But, you don't want him being the one pushing Jalen Hurts, because if he slips and falls on him, he will snap that guy's leg like a little tiny twig.
You are not kidding around. I like during the bowl game back in December when Napier gave him the football and he was running late in the game. How are you tackling him? What are you doing exactly?
No, and that was, hey, that was a great idea by them. The other teams have employed that tactic of taking these 400-pounders, 350-pounders, and trying to get that yard or two. It all began with Refrigerator Perry, which, by the way, I did that comparison. Number one, the regular household refrigerator is between 160 and 350 pounds. So he's larger than a refrigerator, and Refrigerator Perry, at his max weight, weighed 382 pounds, played closer to 335. So Desmond Watson was not only bigger than a refrigerator, but he was bigger than the refrigerator.
That's crazy, dude. What did you say? You were throwing out all these stats. I want to go back to the one you said he was bench pressing, but what was it? How fast was he running? What was that stat?
His 40-yard dash was a 5.93, which is about
That's
a
amazing.
second and a half slower than a wide receiver, but that still translates to 13.8 miles an hour.
That is wild because he could. Okay, guess what? How do I say this without screwing this up? Most human beings are not running like Tyreek Hill of the Dolphins. So the fact he does the 5'9", 40, yeah, he's catching you. Yeah, don't steal his wallet. He is catching you, and he might eat you down the street. That's what's going to happen here. Not good. That's awesome, dude. Hey, and I hope he makes the NFL. I hope he has a long career. I'm with you. You have to lose weight. A human being cannot be that big. There's no way. It's not. You see this in the NBA. So if you play basketball your whole life, your diet is chicken and rice. You're not eating any fatty food. You're running nonstop miles every single basketball game. And then you notice that they're all skinny, they're in shape. The minute they retire, then they could start eating. And you see Shaq and Barkley, and they put on 150 pounds. So my thing is the long-term health with him. What happens when he stops playing football? That's what scares me with this.
Well, you would hope maybe he has one of those body transformations in the other direction, like Jeff Saturday. There was a guy who was gigantic, and you see him now. He's 100, 120 pounds less than his playing days. There are other examples of people who have done that. And, because they have to eat so much to keep up that girth. It's just incredible what these people put their bodies through, which is really why, unless you're a quarterback or unless you're a kicker, you're not going to last more than 8-10 years in that league. And that's for a good career. And that's because the amount you have to eat and the amount of beatings your body takes and the amount of Toradol and other things you have to inject your body with so you're not in pain. I mean, by the time they're 32, that's why these guys at certain age, they look like people in their 50s and 60s because they've been through it, Mark. And I mean, just imagine like this year in college football, the offensive guard who was going against Desmond Watson when he was in the game. I mean, you're 350 pounds. You're used to being the biggest guy around. And here's this guy 100 pounds more than you. And you have to run into him 35 times during a game. I mean, it's like being in a car crash 35 times. It's incredible.
So when I was growing up, and I think you can relate to this story, Tim Walters with the Florida Today. And yes, on the screen, it does say Mr. 321. We have to make sure we get this right. So I was always the guy, just even when we were kids. All right, Mark, you're fast. All right, you play wide receiver, defensive back. You run. We'll get you the ball. You're the fast guy. I've always been the fast guy. You do punt returns, Mark. Mark, play center field. Mark, I was always typecast. And I get it. That was my body type. So when we were going to football games growing up, I secretly had the fantasy of being a big defensive end or defensive lineman. I'm like, they're living the dream. They get to be big and strong, hit those pretty boy quarterbacks. So like when we go to the Bears games, we'd get there early and I would just be fascinated by the defensive linemen. I secretly wanted to be that growing up because I never got that opportunity. Could you relate to that, Tim, what I'm trying to say?
Well, first of all, it would take 3 of me to equal 1 Desmond Watson, if you're wondering, because I weigh 150 pounds. But so I can't even fantasize about it. I will tell you this. When I would go up for Jaguars camp and you see Josh Hines Allen, I mean, he looks like he has been handed down from Mount Olympus. He is chiseled. He's 6'4", like 260 pounds of solid muscle. But then his partner, Trayvon Walker, the other defensive end, walks up, and he's 2 inches taller and outweighs him by 25 pounds. These guys look like they should be the tag team champions of the world, but they're defensive ends chasing a quarterback, and they have to get around 300-pound guys to do it. So I don't know why anyone want to play football. That's what it boils down to. A little guy like me would get murdered.
I agree with you. I do. And I've made this joke for years. Those two on the Jaguars D-line, they could take both of us and throw us around like a rag doll. Just throw us kind of like those old Super Dave shows on Showtime where he do the fake stunts. That'd be us. They just throw us across the room. You're absolutely right. Okay, we have gone 18 minutes and we've not talked about the Gators. It's pretty amazing. It really is. Just give me your honest opinion. That game last Saturday when they took on Texas Tech in the second half, did you think it was over and they were not winning this basketball game?
Yeah, down 9, 3 minutes to go. That's why I turned to my wife. She actually, my kid, my wife, all 3 of us were watching it because I was totally into it. And I was like, God, this stinks. We're going to lose. And then all of a sudden they hit a 3. And when Walter Clayton Jr., he had the ball in the lane, it's like he took one dribble and he took a rubber man step backward and just shot that 3 and it sunk. That's when it was like, oh my God, we're going to win this. I mean, that was the roller coaster of emotion. That was, I called them the cardiac Gators. It is, I can't even describe that comeback. in that manner. They looked terrible. They were playing bad. They were making bad decisions with about maybe 3.5 minutes left. There was that one pass where I can't remember who passed it. They were trying to pass it out to the 3-point line, but there was nobody there, and the ball just dribbles out to half court. And it's like, what are you guys doing? What is going on? And then a timeout is called. I don't know. They sprinkled some pixie dust on them, and they came out, and that was just a heck of a comeback. Auburn, I watched that game earlier this year, and the Gators, they kind of had their way with Auburn. It was a 9-point victory. I believe it was 90-81, if memory serves me correctly. Yes. But, the Gators, when they're scoring, they can score with anybody. And when they're bad, they kind of play down to their competition, which is a little bit what they did against Texas Tech. Not to take anything away from Texas Tech, but Florida was a better team. They just played poorly. But when they played Auburn, they ruled that court and the pace of the game and the scoring of that game. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that. I'm just not sure if Auburn's going to be able to hold up if Florida can kind of get back to hitting on all cylinders as opposed to the way they played against Texas Tech and UConn.
I was listening to other radio shows the past couple of days, and a lot of hosts were coming on. This is national. And it's like, oh, I knew the Gators were going to win. No, you didn't. I don't think the Gators knew they were going to win until they hit those shots. Dude, you talk about offense. They could not stop Texas Tech in that second half for like about 15 straight minutes. They just kept going right to the rim and scoring easy layups. There was one possession. I keep bringing this up. And I like what you said, the one where they threw it out of bounds. You're like, what is this? There was one with about 4 minutes left in that second half. 3 different Gators took a 3-point shot on the same possession, and they all missed. And I'm like, well, this is over. And that play, the play you're talking about with Clayton, that was a Steph Curry level intelligent play. Like, oh, I'm at the free throw line. Like you said, take a step back, hit that 3. 18-4 run to end it. I think they're like a cat. There's like 9 lives here where they had no business beating UConn, and they did. And you can make a case they should have lost against Texas A&M. Do you feel like they still have some mojo, though, where maybe we could do this and win 2 more games? That's my question.
I do. I believe in this squad completely. Look, they got 3 great seniors out there playing. And Clayton, It's just like he can turn it on. He can. And I wish he'd keep it on the whole game. Sometimes he does go away. But, it's just the whole core played well. I don't know what else to say. I think that they can continue to do this. I think they'll beat Auburn. I think everybody in the country wants to see Florida Duke in the championship, not only because everyone picked that in their brackets, but because it truly is the best matchup of the teams remaining. Look, no disrespect to Houston. They're that pesky fly that just won't go away, but no one wants to see an Auburn Houston final or an Auburn Duke final. They want Florida and they want Duke. They want the shootout. They want, Cooper. They want Clayton. They want the 2 best.
Okay, then, hypothetically, in your scenario where it is Florida and Duke, nationally, you don't have a horse in the race. Are both teams bad guys? People hate Duke. People really trashing the state of Florida. Are they both the 2 heels in wrestling going at it? What would this be exactly?
Yeah, that's not a bad way to put it, I guess. It does make you wonder who, but because Duke is the blue blood, they're the one that everybody hates. The Gators have kind of gotten that reputation, and that's a tough one. Who would people root for? I guess it all comes down to who they picked in their bracket, which I think Duke will probably get more of the public sentiment because of that.
After that win against Texas Tech, after that win, I'm like, look, whatever happens moving forward, you got house money. That's how I look at it. Because, again, they should have lost that game to the Red Raiders. But they didn't. They survived, and let's see what happens. So the question is this for supremacy in the SEC? Because one won the regular season title, won the conference championship. Do you like that for this semifinal where you get that type of mojo for this game?
I do. And the SEC, what did they have? 14 total teams in this. Yes. And you get down to the final 4 and you still got 2 left. You've got 50% of the dogs in the fight. It's a shame they aren't on opposite sides of the bracket, because imagine an all SEC championship. People will really be hating on that. But yeah, I mean, this is the one for all the marbles, and I know I'm biased for the Gators because I went there, but I also, if I step outside of that and look at it just from a pure journalism standpoint, where I've seen both of these teams play, I do believe Florida is just a slightly better team than Auburn.
What's your game plan for watching it Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, I've got 2 soccer games with my daughter during the day, and then you get home and watch the Gators at night.
You got it all figured out. I think a lot of people are going to be watching that game on Saturday night here in the state of Florida. I think
Yeah, I
it's going to
believe,
be
what
a
is
big
it,
deal.
609? Does that sound about right?
Yeah, 609 CBS. Again, we lucked out. We're the early game again. I like this. This is good. It is.
Yeah, and
It
the
is
other
a
good news is my daughter's soccer tournament, because she's got 2 games Saturday and one Sunday. It's at Vieira this time, so I don't have to travel to other parts of the state for a tournament. So we're going to finish up there. The Vieira Regional Park is 6 minutes from my house. We should be done right around 5:15, 5:30-ish. I should be able to hustle home with about 15 minutes to spare before game time.
I like it. It's all about you. I like the answer. This is very key. Okay, you got your Cubs jersey on. Is that okay? Is that a player or just like the generic jersey? Who's on the back there? We need to know. Who do you got? Oh, Chris Bryant, huh? That says from the 2016 World Series champions. How long have you had this jersey, buddy? Oh, and the trolley. And you got that trolley.
So my lovely wife, who I can't say enough wonderful things about her, got me this jersey. And this, I'll tell you what, there was one thing I wanted for Christmas that year, and these were limited to whatever number they're limited to, 500 or 1,000, whatever it is. I wanted one of these so bad, and they were sold out, Mark. So I don't know what she did or how much she paid or what she went on eBay and did to get this wonderful piece of memorabilia, but I love this thing. It's 9 years, if you can believe it, since the Cubs won that World Series. So another 99 to go to reach their previous
That's
drought.
right.
But anyhow, this thing means so much to me. I love my Chris Bryant jersey. One of the problems, Mark, and this kind of leads into a top 5 that I did today. Chris
Okay.
Bryant, had he stayed with the Cubs, would have been one of their true all-time greats. Like, he'll always be remembered for him and David Ross and Jake Arrieta, the guys that won that World Series. But the problem with free agency is what happened. Chris Bryant left the Cubs and went somewhere else. So, I decided, would Chris Bryant even crack the top 10 or top 5 of all-time Cubs greats? And unfortunately, I don't think he would. I came up with my top 5 Cubs all-time greats, but there were also 5 I had to leave out, which were tough. So I'll give you, Mark, just the top 5, and then we can discuss some of the names that I had outside looking in. How's that?
All right. We will do this here with Tim Walters, Florida Today newspaper. I agree with the way you just said about Chris Bryant. Give me number 5 then.
Number 5, I went with Rick Sutcliffe, the 1984 Cy Young Award winner. He was also with the Cubs in the playoffs in 84 and 89. He was traded that 84 season. He was 5-4 for Cleveland, came to Chicago and went 16-1. And I can still picture him out there. He was tall. He kind of had a belly. He had the red beard, mustache. He was awesome. So for me, he is a top 5 all-time Cub.
Number 4.
Number 4, I went with Ferguson Jenkins, who is my highest rated pitcher on this list. Everybody loved Fergie Jenkins. He was with the Cubs from 66 to 73. He was also there in 82 and 83 before he retired. He was the first Chicago Cub to win a Cy Young Award. He did so in 1971, one of 5 Cubs to have done that. So I went with Ferguson Jenkins at number 4.
Who is number 3 then?
I went with Andre Dawson. Andre, he was only with the Cubs for 6 years, but what he did there, I mean, how many people are going to win an MVP on a last place team? He had 49 homers and 137 RBIs. In 89, he and Sandberg led the team into the playoffs, something that the Cubs had not done very many times for decades. Andre, he had that unique batting stance. When he came to bat, you felt like he could hit a home run at any time, and the fans just absolutely were smitten with Andre. So he was my number 3.
Did he go into the Hall of Fame as an expo? He went with another team. Okay, who's next on your list then, Tim?
Number 2, my favorite player of all time, second baseman Ryan Sandberg, Hall of Famer.
Oh,
Gold Glove
Not number
winner.
one. Not number one on your. I'm shocked by this.
I
Shocked.
wrestled with this, Mark. I wrestled. I could have made it a tie for first place. Sandberg was with the Cubs from 82 to 97, 282 career home runs, which for a second baseman of that era was unheard of. He signed at the time what was the largest contract in baseball history. If I remember correctly, it was something like 7 years and $49 million. Unheard of money in the late 80s. So my favorite, Ryan Sandberg, there at number 2.
I am in shock, and so are the people here in Central Florida, here in Brevard County, in complete shock. Who is number one then on your list?
It's got to be, hey, let's play 2. Ernie Banks. It's hard to deny. He's called Mr. Cub. I'm Mr. 321. He's Mr. Cub. He was there from 1953 to 1971. He won back-to-back MVPs in 58 and 59. He has 512 home runs. When people think of the Chicago Cubs, even nowadays, they think of Ernie Banks. It was hard. Those are, the 2, Ryan Sandberg and Ernie Banks, but I did go with Ernie at number 1.
Okay. There are 2 names that didn't even play for the Chicago Cubs that might be more famous than the actual team. Harry Carey is what I think of when I think of the Cubs. Harry Carey, a broadcaster for the Cardinals, White Sox, and then most famously the Cubs. And then the number one thing is Wrigley Field is so famous that in Fenway Park, and I get it, you're doing top 5 players. Like, I get it. All right, I will throw in some. They'll never make the Hall of Fame. I think of Kerry Wood, especially that era. I was in high school. I saw Kerry Wood pitch before he got injured. Like, this was 98. That guy was throwing some smoke. He was incredible in person. The saddest is Sammy Sosa. He could have gone down as the greatest Cub of all time. He really, Slammin' Sammy, I saw him play. Okay, this is a random Cub player. He hit, I think, the furthest home run ever at Wrigley Field. There's a random player, Glenn Allen Hill. Have you ever seen this before? The ball he hit, I think it went into Lake Michigan. I will send you the clip of this ball. I can keep going if you want. Mark Pryor. Like, there's all these Cubs players I think about.
I'll throw the ones on my outside looking in. And for people not familiar with Glenn Allen Hill, though, just look up a picture of him. His head looked like a pumpkin. I mean, that guy was he was very large. He was very thick and meaty. But anyhow, so Sammy Sosa was on my outside looking in. It's a shame he had to go down in such disgrace. If there was a number 6 on the list, it probably would have been Billy Williams. He was a teammate of Ernie Banks. He was a rookie of the year. He had a great career, was with the Cubs for 16 seasons. Greg Maddux, I know more people probably do think of him as a Brave. He had a great career with the Cubs. A legend, even though he was only there 2 years. Wild Thing, Mitch Williams.
Yeah.
He was something to behold, the way he'd pitch a ball. And then one person who I think also could have made the list, for you old-timey people, next year his tenure with the Cubs will have started 100 years ago. And then is Hack Wilson, who was with the Cubs from 1926 to 1931. In his 6 seasons with the Cubs, he led the league in home runs 4 times. He also famously has the most RBI of all time. He had 191 in a season to go along with 56 home runs in 1930. So he was somebody that I strongly considered. Probably could have put him in there over Rick Sutcliffe, but I thought we needed more than one pitcher on that list.
Okay, all right. There's too many names in my head now. Did you bring up Mark Grace by any chance?
No, that was my dad's favorite player. Great first baseman. Got screwed out of Rookie of the Year in 1990 or 91 when Chris Sabo won at third baseman for the Reds. It should have been Mark Grace winning that award. Or no, that was 89, actually, now that I think about it. But, he had a great career with the Cubs, went on to be a Diamondback, and I believe he might still be an announcer out there. At least he used to be.
Yeah, number 17 for the Cubs. I loved watching him. Did not wear batting gloves. Left-handed first baseman, Mark Grace. The fans loved him. The ones that get lost in the shuffle. I was telling this to someone else the other day. The Lou Piniella Cubs. Didn't they go to the playoffs like 2 years in a row? When was that? Late 2000s? Am I crazy here? I think that gets lost in everything.
It would have been a little earlier than that, but yeah, he did have a couple of playoff runs, old Angry Lou.
Yeah,
Uh, Sean Dunston is another one
there's another one.
remember the Sean-O-meter? They would have it out in the outfield, and he'd start out and he'd be terrible, and he'd be batting like 186. And then once the weather heated up, Sean Dunston would heat up, and the Sean-O-meter would slowly rise, and they had the little numbers that they would flip. That lineup, and remember Jerome Walton, who won Rookie of the Year in 1990. So they had Jerome Walton leading off. They had Ryan Sandberg hitting 2. They had Mark Grace hitting 3. They had Andre Dawson hitting 4. I mean, that lineup was awesome. At one point in the late 80s, they had Rafael Palmeiro before he moved on. Just a lot of great names that came through those Chicago Cubs teams.
Dusty Baker was the manager of the 03 team, one of the most famous teams. I always remember them. I think the 98 team, when Sosa hit the 66 homers, they won the wild card. I think that is one of the most famous teams. Okay, and you forgot one name. Ron Santo has to be up there as a consideration. It's got it. I mean, come on. And the funniest thing about him is it's more about the 69 team. One of the most famous Cubs teams of all time, 69, the Black Cat, they lose the pennant down the stretch to the Mets. So what's always fascinating about that is my perspective growing up, I'd be surrounded by Cubs fans, and then their dads would tell me about how great 69 was. And it's one of the great regrets that Cubs team didn't win. And it's funny being here in Florida. So then I'm surrounded by Mets fans, and I get the other side of the story of how great 69 Mets are. It's fascinating. Even though I wasn't born for another, 13 years or so, it's fascinating, Tim.
Yeah, well, Mark, and last year I had Andre Dawson on my podcast, which was really cool. But I also had Art Shamsky, who was on those 69 Mets. And Shamsky, we talked about it. The Mets by midseason, they were actually a game or two under 500. And then he said something just happened the second half of that season, and they went on an absolute tear. And so you're right. When you look at that Cubs team, again, Ernie Banks, Fergie Jenkins, Billy Williams, Ron Santo, how they didn't win it, how they didn't at least win one with that core group, it's beyond comprehension.
Okay, if you're a New York Yankees fan, you're like in the playoffs every year. But if you're rooting for all these other teams in baseball, yeah, if you have a chance, you better go for it, because you might not be back for another 10 years. Okay, you're absolutely right. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm gonna wrap up with you. Then I wanted to go over this with you real quick. So I'm going to finish some work. I'm going to drive to the Orlando airport this afternoon. I'm flying to Chicago. So the game plan is, so last year I booked this big flight to go to Chicago to then drive to Milwaukee, not to see Alice Cooper like Wayne and Garth. No, we're not doing that. I'm sorry. But we're going to the Midwest game. It's called, make sure I say this right. It's like the classic Midwest Gaming Convention. This is, I know, the largest United States video game convention. It's once a year. They have conventions all over the country. This is the Godzilla of them, the GOAT. There's over 150 vendors selling video games. I am bringing cash. I am ready to haggle with vendors, and I'm going to get these retro games. But that's Saturday. So my buddy Jason is like, well, it's Cubs opening day on Friday. I was like, I did not know this. So it's going to be a high of 40 degrees tomorrow. We are going to go to Wrigleyville. I'm not even going to the game. We are just going to every bar. My brother's going to have to pick us up once he gets off work. Yeah. I wish you could get in the suitcase with me, buddy, and come with me tomorrow. I'm very excited for this.
They're opening up with the Padres, which, I mean, they've got a great band of young players over there on the Padres. They're coming off a sweep of the pathetic Athletics. I mean, one of those games, I think they scored 19 runs or something crazy like that. And look, the Cubs are 5-4 now. If you get rid of those two fake games that happened in some faraway land like 3 weeks ago, they're 5-2 since the season started. But we have to tack on wins for the Dodgers, who are still undefeated. You think they'll go 162-0?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, exactly. Well, the part you don't know outside of baseball in Wrigleyville, I've been to the Metro concert venue across the street. I remember being in a show. I think I was in college, and someone kicked me in the back of the head in the mosh pit. That was good. That's when you turn into a man. You get a bar mitzvah at 13, get kicked in the back of the head at a concert. That's what it is. I've been to speed dating across the street from Wrigley Field. I've been on numerous dates. I was at a bar on my 40th birthday. We were at is it Sluggers? I forget what the bar was called. And we bumped into some women there. And one of the blondes goes, "Oh, I live in Florida." And I go, "Oh, I live in Florida too. What part do you live in?" She's like, "You probably never heard of it." I'm like, "Try me." "Oh, I live in this community called Vieira." It's so bizarre, the stories you will hear after a while. Okay. How can we check out your article, buddy, and all your articles right now online?
Yeah, so I work here in town at Florida Today. You could go to floridatoday.com. I'm the sports editor for the Jacksonville Florida Times Union. You can read news about the Jaguars and golf and lots of other things at jacksonville.com. My article about Desmond Watson is at the Gainesville Sun's website. That is gainesville.com. We own all the major websites here around the state. It's a great thing, Mark. And when you mentioned going to Milwaukee to see Alice Cooper, all I could think of was it used to be pronounced Milwaukee.
Yes, there is. I did not know this, and I'm going to take my photo and show it to you. There's the convention center downtown in Milwaukee. Then there's the basketball arena where the Bucks play, right? Then you have Miller Park. Is that the baseball? So it's all right there. But the number one thing I'm going to do, down the street from the convention center, the Riverwalk, there is the Fonz statue in honor of Arthur Fonzarelli. I'm going to take my photo. So my question was, all right, he gets a statue. Where is Laverne and Shirley's statue, or Lenny and Squiggy? Where are theirs? I need to get a statue of everyone, and we need to take our photo. Let's go.
Yeah, I think Laverne and Shirley get it before Lenny and Squiggy do.
We're going old school. His name's Tim Walters, Florida Today newspaper. Yeah, he joined me here in studio, the Anidjar and Levine Accident Attorney Studios. Give them a call today, 1-800-747-FREE. That's 1-800-747-3733. I'll bring you back something. I promise. I will do that, Tim. Have a great weekend. I'll talk to you later, all right?
Thank you, Mark. I've always got room for a Cubs tchotchke here in my office, and I love it when a plan comes together.